Today we're going to read Felix and his Mayflower 2 Adventures by Peter Arenstam, illustrations by Ronnie Rooney. When we open the book, one of the first pages that we come across is a map that shows the route of the original Mayflower from England across the Atlantic Ocean to Provincetown and then Plymouth in 1620. Then it shows Mayflower 2 and the route that it took, which was a more southern route from England across the Atlantic Ocean to the same destination. Introduction. The story of Felix and his adventures on Mayflower 2 is based on true events in the 1950s unfolding in England and America. In 1951, Henry Hornblower II, founder of Plymouth Plantation, a new museum then being built in Plymouth, Massachusetts, hired a naval architect and historian, William Baker, to design a reproduction of Mayflower, the ship that brought the first colonists to Plymouth in 1620. At the same time, in England, Warwick Charlton, founder of Project Mayflower Limited, contracted with Stuart Upham, a shipbuilder in Brixham, England, to build a reproduction Mayflower using Baker's plans. Charlton had long dreamed of this project and of sailing a newly constructed Mayflower 2 across the Atlantic to present it to the people of America as a gift and symbol of the bond between the two countries. The young kitten, Felix, a gift to the ship before she sailed in 1957, would come of age on that voyage. Along with the crew, the kitten would experience all the adventures of an ocean crossing. From getting his sea legs and learning the ropes to enjoying life at sea and making landfall at last in America, the young kitten became a real sailor and a part of the continuing story of Mayflower 2. Chapter 1. A Mascot for Mayflower 2. Felix looked down the hill toward Brixham Harbor and tried to see the ship. He had heard all about it from Mr. Thompson, the man he was traveling with from home. It was early morning in the English seaside town, but the shipyard ahead was already abuzz with activity. Felix spied the ship, surrounded by carpenters working here and there. He could see a crane lifting a web of tar-covered rigging onto the masts and workmen fitting wooden stocks to the big anchors lying on the pier. The three masts and the high, colorfully painted stern with a painted image of a Mayflower towered over the action. Mr. Thompson carried Felix in his arms and explained the history of the ship as they walked. "I've been following this story in the papers for 2 years now, young Felix," said Mr. Thompson as he lightly scratched the kitten on his head. "Seems a Mr. Warwick Charlton had a brainstorm to build a reproduction of the old pilgrim ship Mayflower and sail it to America. He intends to just give it away to a museum over there. Mr. Charlton figured he should do something to remind everyone how the English and Americans worked so well together during the war. You don't remember the war," Mr. Thompson said, holding the kitten up to his face as they walked. "But if the ship is half as well built as it looks in the papers, it will be a fine symbol of the strength of the bond between our two countries." Felix began to fidget in Mr. Thompson's arms after being carried for so long. As they neared the shipyard, Felix could hear men calling out to each other, saws buzzing away, and the steady thunk, thunk, thunk of a shipwright wielding an adze. A man wearing a black beret with a set of plans rolled up under his arm hurried past Felix and Mr. Thompson. "Excuse me, sir," Mr. Thompson said to the man in the black beret. "I take it that is the good ship Mayflower?" "Why, yes it is," the man in the black beret answered. "But to be precise, she is Mayflower 2. She is, after all, a reproduction of the original, made completely new from a set of plans I have been working on for the last 6 years. There is no other reproduction 17th century ship quite as accurate as Mayflower 2. I beg your pardon, sir, Mr. Thompson said. I have a keen interest in the story of the ship. I've read everything printed about this project. I should have known better. If the articles are right, you must be Mr. William Baker from Hingham, Massachusetts, in America. That's right. How do you do? You will have to excuse me. Captain Villiers and Stewart Upham are waiting for this newly corrected rigging plan. I have no time to talk with you now. Mr. Baker waved the rolled-up plans. The ship must be ready to sail no later than April if she is to arrive in America on time. I won't keep you. I am headed for the ship now with something of my own for them. Mr. Thompson held up the kitten. Felix playfully pawed at Mr. Thompson's hands. I want to give the crew this young kitten, but I want to surprise them. You know, sort of sneak him aboard and present him to the captain. Felix just wanted to get down and stretch his own legs for a bit. May I suggest you stop in the rigging loft on your way to the ship and get a canvas sack to disguise your gift? I'm afraid that the captain is not much for young kittens on his ship. With that, Mr. Baker hurried on with his roll of plans. Mr. Thompson made a detour away from the ship toward the rigging loft Mr. Baker had pointed out. Moments later, Mr. Thompson and Felix stepped out of the loft. Felix wrinkled his nose at the strong smell of tarred hemp clinging to the canvas bag in which he now rode. He sneezed twice as Mr. Thompson walked back toward the ship. You hush now. I'll have you out of this old sack in no time. Let me find Captain Villiers.